There is a consensus amongst most gun owners that the AR market has grown stale over the past half-decade. I think what's worse than being boring is what now qualifies for entry-level has been mired in a price race to the bottom with sketchy QC as the standard to stay competitive. At the end of the day, freedom keepers are meant to be self-defense against all forms of tyranny. A good rifle, or a pistol in this case, should be available in a Goldilocks zone of affordability and quality. The Springfield Saint Victor is surprisingly a solid example of just that. Since they have now come out with an update to their 11.5 pistol in the Springfield Saint Victor V2, here is what you can expect to find. But first, a quick word from our sponsors.
The proven Crossfire sight is now available in new flavors. Same great, affordable, bomb-proof reflex sight with a 2 MOA reticle and 50,000 hour battery life backed up by the Vortex no questions asked VIP warranty, but now it's available with a tan finish or a green dot.
The Saint Victor line, in my opinion, is the beginning of the mid-tier bracket when it comes to ARs. It offers a few quality-of-life upgrades over mil-spec while keeping costs down. At the heart of the system is a 9310 MPI-tested bolt with a Melinite coating, which is an appreciated feature when considering servicing or the service life of the weapon. The smoothness of the finish makes it easier when cleaning compared to a parkerized or a phosphate finish. The gas system uses a pinned gas block, which I much prefer over the set screw style Loctite dependent ones. Set screw gas blocks, if done right, are fine and generally reliable, but are more prone to twisting or walking under recoil or impact compared to a pinned gas block. It was also not an obnoxiously overgassed system, which is more rare than you'd think from a factory gun. For fun, we tested it with an FRT and were able to get it to run reliably with no issues without changing anything in the gun other than the trigger. They wisely went with an 11.5 barrel length, which is the non-agreed upon Goldilocks zone for good muzzle velocity while maintaining a shorter overall length. The chromoly vanadium barrel is a medium profile with a 1-in-7 twist, which prefers heavier grain weight 5.56. With match 77 grain ammo, we were consistently getting about 2 MOA out of these. With cheaper 55 grain M193, I would expect about 3 to 4 MOA based on what we saw using a Gila and Winchester 55 grain. The receivers are a standard 70-75 aluminum forged set, and the lowers have an adjustable rubber tensioner that is accessible under the pistol grip. This allows the user to tighten the tolerance between the upper and lower receivers to eliminate play or eliminate the rattling sound associated with a loose-fitting receiver set. However, keep in mind that the tighter this tensioner is, the harder it will be to push out your takedown pins to service the firearm. The Saint Victor V2 sports some welcome upgrades over the V1. Like the V1, the V2 has the same free-floated M-LOK handguard with the big anti-rotation tabs. They use the same barrel nut as the V1, but added another set of screws at the 6 o'clock position for redundancy, along with some QD points for a sling that were not present in the V1. This lockup seems pretty secure, screwing directly into the barrel nut and indexing at the top and the bottom of the upper receiver as well as the dust cover retainer. The V1 had a single stage trigger that was marginally better than mil-spec. It seems they stuck with that same trigger this time around, however they opted for a straight trigger over the curved trigger bow in the V1. As for the other touch points, they also swapped the safety to an enhanced ambi 45-degree safety and ditched the mil-spec charging handle for an ambi radian. Lastly, they went to a 4-prong flash hider on the V2 versus the A2 birdcage on the V1. With an MSRP of around $1,100, this is hundreds of doll hairs cheaper than a lot of mid-tier options while not slacking on quality assembly and parts, especially after the updated V2, there is a lot of value here. And prior to adding 8 pounds worth of accessories to ours, it came in at a very reasonable 5 pounds 9 ounces. So now that you're done with our organized thoughts on the version 2 of the Springfield Saint Victor, these are kind of just the, I guess, touch points on what it was like to actually shoot it. We actually got the version 1 and the version 2 together. Springfield was nice enough to show us both. The things they upgraded were ironically the things I complained about in the first version of it.
Yeah.
I am, at this point, I guess, a soft-handed millennial, and I like ambi charging handles, or at least a charging handle that has one side that's a little bit bigger that I can actuate one-handed. Mil-spec ones, you do have to give the little claw to work. They also typically don't do anything in gas mitigation. Since we've done suppressor series stuff, I tend to try to suppress everything I touch. And mil-spec charging handles don't help you all of that. The Radians do help you to some degree with that. They have the little ledge on them. The 45-degree throw on the safety selector. I'm not an ambi guy, so I had no issue with the 90-degree one at all. But this is the nicest ambidextrous one, mostly because it's got a short little nub on the offhand. So if you were left-handed, you get a little nub. So it doesn't actually interfere with your knuckle.
I like, though, that like a lot of 45-degree like safeties are kind of like this really like hyper super gaudy looking thing, and this one kind of just looks like a regular mil-spec, regular, but it feels very nice.
Yeah, if you're gonna do an ambi one, that's as good as it gets, I think, in my opinion. And then the 45-degree throw, I'm a 90. I have so many reps on a 90-degree throw that it kind of weirds me out every single time. But
I feel you. It feels like you're gonna like snap it off,
right? Or that it's bound. In my brain, I was like, oh, did I go all the way?
Yeah. Getting all those ambi controls, I think, is pretty nice. I don't think that you necessarily need it, but if you're buying a gun to not have to worry about it again in the future, there are definitely times where it comes in handy and it's convenient.
The 4-prong flash hider they have on there, you can take it or leave it. I'm replacing most of my stuff with I have Surefire muzzle device on this. It's either here nor there. I thought the A2 was fine, especially if it's just there for cutting flash.
Yeah,
I think the A2s do fine.
I don't really think you're getting much better than an A2.
Right.
I mean, it might just be like an aesthetics thing. The 4-prong looks a little bit cooler than the A2.
It does have a drip. And I've noticed a lot of people going to 4-prong. So I don't know if some manufacturer somewhere is white labeling these things or whatever.
Yeah. And I mean, at its base, it really is just kind of an AR with a few real enhancements other than ambi. The ambi controls, they did include on both versions kind of like a set screw similar to the Aero Precision lowers. But instead of it being a metal one, in this case, it's rubber. So you can kind of tighten. Yeah, like on the other ones, you kind of had to get it just perfect. And even then, it would still be very tight to get your takedown pins.
That rear pin, yeah.
On this one, it's got like a little rubber tip on it. So you kind of tighten it in, and obviously it's in your lower receiver, and it's pushing up against your upper receiver, and it creates tension, so you don't have receiver play between your upper and lower. But with it having that little rubber piece there, it makes it so it doesn't get bound. So like if you actually need to do service on the gun or maintenance it in the field, it's not a pain in the butt to get it. Like usually you have to like, okay, I'm trying my hardest not to strip a round out of my magazine to take my gun down, and then eventually you just have to bite the bullet and go for it.
And if I'm paying north of, there's like an $800 to $900 threshold where a lot of people are like, I better be getting some features for this. That's an actual deviation from just a standard mil-spec lower. Yeah. Same thing with the handguard. It's the exact same type of lockup that they have on the handguard to their barrel nut on V1 versus V2. However, the inserts they use to give you lockable QD cups, which thank you for doing that. I hate all of the free spinning QD cups because your sling does a bunch of weird stuff when you use QD.
And I think too, the lockup system on this is very interesting because it has kind of these big tabs that grab the upper receiver, but also like it has a ton of screws, basically like holes that go all the way around it. And obviously, like it has to be clocked to a certain degree so that it can, engage all those screws. But essentially, you're getting like 3 o'clock.
It's 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and 9 o'clock screw-ins into the barrel nut, and then that handguard itself has like 1 o'clock, 11 o'clock, and 7 o'clock and 4 o'clock connectors to the upper receiver. There's like way more anti-rotation going on than what it looks like.
And obviously when you're looking at it now, it's like kind of obvious. Like before, all it was there was just like a faux, like not completely cut out M-lock slot, which makes sense because you weren't going to be using that for anything anyway because the barrel nut's
nothing behind it, right?
But also at the same point, like, hey, you can still get to the screw holes from here. Like, why not add, so it's kind of, it's a little something, but also at the same time, it's, take it or leave it.
There's almost no increase in price.
It's increasing surface area that's grabbing onto your barrel nut. So if anything, it's adding a little bit of rigidity, I'd say.
Yeah. We shot this both unsuppressed, suppressed with a reduced back pressure can, and then suppressed with as much back pressure as we could get on it. And both unsuppressed and suppressed with it. We had an RC3 on this. It was very pleasant to shoot. On a full back pressure can, you're going to have to do some stuff on the bolt. This is not nearly that bad. Again, you have something going on with the radian. The gas system was very fairly tuned.
Has a straight trigger shoe if you're into that.
It's a mil-spec plus trigger. Yeah. I do think that the flat trigger shoe does help to a certain degree. Trigger pull on a rifle, it is what it is. I ain't take it or leave it. It's for the price, it's right at the edge of going from entry level to mid tier. I think in price point. I don't think that you're overpaying for a feature you don't need. But at the very minimum, the two that we got, I was very impressed with fit and finish. You don't see like goofy stuff like the castle not being staked properly.
Yeah.
You can look at the bolt and say, hey, this was assembled without something weird. This was a very well buttoned up gun. And for the money, I think for a duty gun, this makes a ton of sense. If you're not wanting to build, but you're not wanting to go spend money on like a BCM or a Super Duty, this is right at that threshold where you're probably not changing anything about it. Like technically there's nothing different on this. There's only a bunch of stuff added to it. This is probably, with really good ammunition, right at the verge of, I think it's like 1.5 to 2 MOA.
Yeah, probably closer to 2 MOA.
But that's on par with almost everything else in its price range. Most gas...
T2's 2 MOA.
Yeah, that's true.
It's also an 11.5.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's an 11.5. So like you're only able to stabilize the bullet so much. It's a 1 in 7 twist. So you're going to have to go heavier on the grain weight. But I thought that was good accuracy for what's really meant to be like a rack grade gun.
Yeah.
This was great. Springfield has pleasantly surprised me with how well put together this was. This is competitively in there where it's like, we're not going to be the cheapest, but we're not going to be the most expensive, and we're going to give you features that make sense without having you pay for something like really goofy that you don't need or you don't want. This is going to satisfy, I would argue, like 90% of end users. There's a couple of things that I saw as far as like adjustable gas that you might want if you're going to be running like a fully suppressed gun. Or there's, I'm sure, some handguard options or whatever it is that maybe somebody would.
I think if you're new to firearms, building can sometimes be a little intimidating, even if you watch all the videos.
Right.
Generally, and I say generally, factory guns are going to tend to be a little bit more reliable because obviously their R&D went into developing and making sure that system works and is reliable. Because if it's not, then everybody talks about it online, and it's a very obvious thing.
Right.
But
you would know if these were bad. None of these complaints were about these guns aren't reliable. Yeah. Most of this stuff was preference. If you do not own an AR, this makes a ton of sense. Go check it out. If you have any experience with this rifle yourself, go ahead and let us know in the comment section below on how you did and lie about your 1 MOA 10.5 gun. And then we're going to do a full write-up with this in the forums if you'd like to argue with more autistic people than myself. But more than anything, support the companies that are supporting your right to the Second Amendment, because without them, this would be a fruitless conversation in a museum and not something you could actually go buy.